On Sunday night, we mentioned during the Football Night in America broadcast, not just the Jackson Dart concussion, but the fact that the Giants have now lost 4 games this season, despite leading by double digits on the road. 11 straight losses on the road, 3-19 their last 22 games. And one of the reasons we planted that flag on Sunday night was because of that reporting from last week that was disputed, but somebody asked Brian Daboll about it on Friday, and he just said, hey, you can control what you can control. And obviously, at the end of the day, you can't control when a team decides to move on. That's what the Giants did yesterday. It hit right around, I think, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Daboll was 20-40-1 in 4 seasons as the Giants head coach. Winning Coach of the Year is the kiss of death. I need to go back and look at the past Coach of the Year winners, but it seems like the last 10 years, if you win Coach of the Year, that just means coach that's going to be fired in 2 years.
And it's crazy because the expectation goes through the roof. We actually talked about this at the end of the year last year on here, when I think Mara said, like, the expectation is to make the playoffs the next year. I remember I was on here with you, and we pulled up the Giants. That's before the schedule was out, but your opponents were there. And I remember we looked at it, and we were like, oh, like, playoffs with this schedule, like, that's going to be tough. And now you take a step back, and you just try to focus on just this season because the Giants decided to keep Daboll for this season. And I think coming in, you're like, all right, they got to find a quarterback. They got to find a future. And they found Jackson Dart. And then Jackson Dart is playing at a level that feels like it's better than everybody would have expected. And I get when you put the overall record and you put all that together, it's like this is not good enough. And that's what happens in this league. You get fired when that happens. But I think for Daboll to be such a huge part of the team saying, hey, we want Jackson Dart, let's go get Jackson Dart, and then figuring out a way, and then now having success with Jackson Dart, it's almost like, hey, this is as good as it was going to get. Now, I think the hard things is what you just mentioned. When you have a team, and no matter what your expectations are, your team is leading in the fourth quarter 4 different times in a season, and you are 0-4, I think when anybody sees that, they're like, we can't keep doing this. And I think that's what created the ultimate issue for Daboll and being the head coach of the New York Giants is, hey, you're finding a way to do these things. Like, I was at the Eagles game. I called that game when they went out there and they outcoached the Eagles every which way you can say. Like, they were more prepared. Their game plan was better, and they did that without superior talent on the field. And then you go and you watch some of the other games, and you're like, they're doing it. Like, they're finding a way. And I would say especially offensively, like, they were able to put up points because it's not like we walked away and said, hey, they have this dominating defense that was out there just shutting everybody down. They went out there and they were able to play well enough to win some games. And you just look up and you're like, how do we lose these games? And ultimately that was, I think, the decision maker for Daboll being gone. But we've talked about it. Like, this league is weird. Like, you hire 2 guys at the same time, you fire one, you keep the other. It still seems like this. I don't know if this is going to be the picture perfect thing of going forward, but I think teams feel like at some point they just need change, and Giants created change.
Every organization is different, and there are different models. In some teams, the head coach is basically in charge. Elsewhere, that traditional old-school GM model, which the Giants, I think, try to utilize, the rule of thumb was a GM gets to hire 2 coaches before the GM is on the hot seat. I'm a firm believer in, especially when the guys come in together, I'm a firm believer in shared accountability, with the message being you're both going to succeed or you're both going to fail. And if you both succeed, you're going to share in the rewards. And if you both fail, you're going to have the same consequence. And here's why. And I'm not saying Joe Schoen should have been fired. I'm saying you either keep both or you fire both. Same as what happened in Miami 11 days ago. Half measures don't fix anything because it creates a cultural problem. The message it sends to the organization is that in moments of adversity, which will be inevitable, there's only been one perfect season in NFL history. Teams that win Super Bowls at some point go through adversity. Every team is going to go through adversity because every game you're playing somebody who's trying to do the exact opposite of what you're trying to do. There will be bad moments. There will be unfortunate headlines. There will be callers to WFAN saying, get rid of everybody. You're going to have to live through that. You're going to have to fight through that. In those moments, Devin, you don't want to create an incentive to save your own ass by blaming the other guy. And when you show that you will fire one or the other, the message is, when the going gets tough, start pointing fingers. Blame the other guy. And coaches are especially sensitive to this because during the games, they're down on the field working while people up in the luxury suite are talking shit to the owner about the coach. And that is a very poisonous, toxic combination that is prevalent in pro sports. I talked to a head coach once who said, you know what, I went to a basketball game in town, and I was up in the suite, and I heard the things that the GM and others were saying to the owner about the coach during the game, and I thought, holy shit, is this how people talk? Is this what they're saying about me when I'm down on the sideline trying to win football games? Are you kidding me? So now we know, but now we know that how we got here is the crap has hit the fan for the Giants. And at some level, I think it's fair to wonder, did Schoen successfully direct the anger and frustration from ownership toward Brian Daboll and not toward him? Because of the outcome. The outcome proves that, owner's pissed off. Who am I going to blame? Get rid of both of them. Well, Mr. Mayor, before you do anything rash, let me make a case for myself, please. And that's why I don't like that, because I don't like that. I think you got to be, it's like the old, I've used this metaphor before, when they would do the company picnics and they would do the three-legged race and they would tie the right leg of one guy to the left leg of the other guy and they'd do a race. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it needs to be. So you either both fall flat on your face or you both make it to the finish line. And if it's separate, it's just not a good dynamic to have in your organization.
Yeah, and I see your point. I think sometimes people, you hear that and you're like, man, that means that one guy went and bashed the other guy. It's like, no, but if I'm the GM or I'm the head coach and you call me into your office as the ownership and you start talking about the season, the thing I'm going to do is tell you what I've done well right away. So that to me is what creates the issue, because if you're going to call and meet with guys and talk to guys, why would I not tell you what I think I've done well? I don't need to necessarily say, hey, they didn't do this or they didn't do that. I can just tell you what I've done. And if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm telling you how, hey, we got Abdul Carter, then we drafted back and we went and got Jackson Dart, and then, hey, I went out there, Javon Holland. I went and got a good player in Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo. Whatever it is that you think you've done well, if you're going to get asked about it, you're going to give your resume. And I think that's the hard thing in any of these situations, because now I look at Joe Schoen, he's brought in different guys as a general manager. He's done different things. If the next guy he thinks is a good head coach and it doesn't work out, but he continues to do a good job at bringing in talent, is he now only evaluated for bringing in a bad head coach? And everybody else that he's brought into the organization from a talent, is that just going to be thrown away if they don't win with the new regime that's coming in at the head coaching position? I think that's what we saw with Tennessee, right? They got rid of Mike Vrabel and they said, hey, John Robinson, you're running it. Oh, well, we don't like what you did next. All right, we're going to get rid of you. All right, we're going to Ray Carthon in. Then we're going to get rid of him. You just create kind of musical chairs of bringing guys in left and right, because to me, you got to make a decision. Is this guy, if Joe Schoen's the guy, you think he's a really good general manager, then, hey, we're going to stick to our general manager and we're going to stick with him. But if not, where do you kind of draw a line in the sand and say, this is where we're at, this is how we're doing this process? Because now, to me, it gets kind of confusing.
And look, again, I'm not suggesting Joe Schoen should be fired, but I'm just trying to understand how we got to the point where one stays and one goes. Because at the end of last season, it felt like John Mara took a walk through the woods and contemplated what he's going to do and came to the decision he's going to keep both guys. And I said then, it can't just be 1 year. If you're going to go out and try to get a franchise quarterback, you have to give this time. You have to give this an opportunity. And you can't get caught up in, we blew a lead against the Broncos. We blew a lead against the Bears. This guy's got to go. You can't get caught up in that. You got to see it through. But off-season hard knocks. Joe Schoen's the guy that let Saquon Barkley out of the building. And, look, they may have creatively edited, I don't know. But the way that thing came across, Joe Schoen's the guy that rolled the dice on Saquon Barkley leaving the building. And, they went through that thing with how do we do this with Barkley's contract, with Daniel Jones' contract. They misplayed that because they didn't get Barkley signed. They wanted to get Barkley signed and franchise tag Daniel Jones. But when that didn't happen, they got Jones signed for more than they wanted to pay because they ended up having to tear up the contract as soon as they could. And they franchise tagged Barkley. And just the whole thing blew up in their faces. And Barkley's success and Daniel Jones' success is a black mark on that scenario for Joe Schoen. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.